I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was watching me. It was as if a pair of invisible eyes followed my every move, lurking in the shadows just beyond my sight. Nights had become my personal purgatory, a time when the normal rules of the world seemed to dissolve, leaving me vulnerable to the unknown. It all started when I moved into that old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, thinking it was the perfect place to start anew. Little did I know that I was stepping into a nightmare that would consume my sanity. The house, with its peeling paint and creaking floorboards, held a sinister charm that I dismissed as mere eccentricities. The real estate agent assured me that the strange noises were just the echoes of its history, but as the nights unfolded, I realized it was much more than that. The whispers began as soft, indistinct murmurings in the wind, brushing against my ears like ghostly fingers. They beckoned me to listen, to understand their cryptic messages, but every attempt to decipher them only left me more bewildered. The first sign that the house was not what it seemed came on the third night. I was lying in bed, tossing and turning, trying to drown out the mysterious voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls around me. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed a faint glow in the corner of the room. A pale figure materialized, its ethereal form bathed in an otherworldly light. It stood there, silent and unmoving, watching me with eyes that seemed to pierce through the fabric of my soul. Fear gripped me, paralyzing my every muscle. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. The figure in the corner remained motionless, yet its presence bore into me, like a weight on my chest. I shut my eyes tightly, hoping that when I opened them again, the apparition would be gone. But when I dared to look, it was still there, a silent sentinel in the shadows. Morning came, bringing with it a false sense of security. I convinced myself that it was just a product of an overactive imagination, fueled by stress and the unfamiliar surroundings. However, as the days turned into weeks, the supernatural occurrences escalated. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut with an unseen force, and cold spots manifested throughout the house, sending shivers down my spine. Desperation drove me to seek answers. I delved into the history of the house, uncovering a dark tale of tragedy and malevolence. The previous owners had met untimely deaths under mysterious circumstances, their fates intertwined with a long-forgotten ritual that was said to have summoned forces beyond human comprehension. The more I learned, the more I realized that I was not alone in that house. Something malevolent had taken residence, feeding off the fear and despair that lingered in its walls. Determined to break free from the supernatural clutches, I sought the help of a local medium. The moment she stepped into the house, her eyes widened with recognition, as if she could sense the malevolent force that haunted the place. She spoke in hushed tones, warning me of a malevolent entity that had crossed over from the realm of the dead. The medium offered to perform a cleansing ritual to rid the house of its dark presence, but the price she demanded was steep, a piece of my own soul, willingly sacrificed to appease the vengeful spirits. Desperation clouded my judgment, and I agreed to the ritual, hoping it would bring an end to the nightmare. The medium began chanting in a language I couldn't comprehend, drawing symbols in the air with a flick of her fingers. The atmosphere in the house grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and I could feel the malevolent force resisting the exorcism. Shadows danced on the walls, contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to mock our feeble attempts at banishment. As the ritual reached its climax, a piercing scream echoed through the house. It was a sound that transcended the physical realm, a soul-rending wail that seemed to reverberate through the very core of my being. The medium's eyes glazed over, and her body convulsed as if she were a vessel for forces beyond her control. I recoiled in horror, realizing that I had unleashed something far more sinister than the initial haunting. The room was plunged into darkness, the only source of light emanating from the symbols drawn by the medium. The air grew heavy with a palpable malevolence, and I felt a presence closing in on me. Whispers surrounded me, taunting and mocking, as if the spirits were reveling in my vulnerability. I tried to flee, stumbling through the darkness, but an unseen force held me in place. The medium's voice rose in pitch, her words becoming incomprehensible as she channeled the spirits. Shadows converged, coiling around her like serpents hungry for the taste of the living. I pleaded for mercy, begged for release, but my cries were swallowed by the darkness. The symbols etched in the air glowed with an ominous intensity, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. Just when I thought I had reached the brink of madness, the room fell silent. The medium collapsed to the floor, drained of energy. The symbols in the air dissipated, leaving only the lingering scent of burnt sage. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and I found myself alone in the dimly lit room. The malevolent force that had plagued me seemed to have vanished, but the cost of its expulsion weighed heavily on my conscience. The once charming Victorian house now bore the scars of a supernatural battle, its walls whispering the echoes of the ritual that had taken place. The medium, though alive, was a mere shell of her former self, haunted by the spirits she had summoned. As for me, I carried the burden of a fractured soul, forever marked by the darkness that had touched my life. The experience left me scarred, both mentally and spiritually. The line between the living and the dead had blurred, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolent force still lingered, waiting for an opportune moment to return. Nights remained a battleground, haunted by the memory of that piercing scream, and the shadows that had danced in the darkness. In the end, I became a prisoner of my own fear, trapped in a house that no longer felt like home. The supernatural horror that had unfolded within those walls left an indelible mark on my soul, a constant reminder that some nightmares cannot be easily exorcised. The malevolent force had been banished, but the scars it left behind served as a chilling testament to the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. I tried to resume a semblance of normalcy, but the supernatural residue lingered like an unseen stain. The once inviting rooms of the Victorian house now felt suffocating, each creak and groan serving as a reminder of the malevolent forces that had been unleashed. I began to avoid certain corners of the house, convinced that the shadows held secrets too terrifying to confront. Sleep eluded me, for every time I closed my eyes, I could hear the distant whispers of the spirits. It was as if they had left a part of themselves behind, an echo of their torment embedded in the very fabric of the house. Desperation led me to seek solace in the daylight hours, but even then, a sense of unease clung to me like a second skin. In a futile attempt to regain control, I turned to experts in the paranormal. Paranormal investigators and priests alike visited the accursed house, armed with an array of tools and rituals. Each attempt to cleanse the lingering malevolence proved fruitless, as if the spirits reveled in the futility of our efforts. The experts left with furrowed brows, acknowledging the undeniable presence but unable to provide any lasting respite. I sank deeper into a state of isolation, severed from the outside world by the malevolent energy that permeated my home. Friends and family grew concerned, but my attempts to explain the inexplicable left them skeptical. Dismissing my experiences as the product of an overactive imagination, I withdrew from the world, my only companions the haunting whispers that echoed through the lonely halls. One night, unable to bear the torment any longer, I decided to confront the source of my torment head-on. Armed with candles and a tattered journal filled with hastily scrawled notes, I ventured into the darkest corners of the house, where the malevolence seemed to coalesce. The air grew thick with tension as I entered the room where the ill-fated ritual had taken place. As I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the remnants of a supernatural battle, I felt a chill that went beyond the physical. The whispers intensified, their voices rising in a cacophony of despair. I could sense the spirits reaching out, their spectral fingers probing the recesses of my mind. It was as if they sought a connection, a bridge between the realms of the living and the dead. In that moment of vulnerability, I felt a sudden surge of empathy. The spirits were not mere malevolent entities. They were souls trapped in a limbo of anguish. Their screams echoed with the pain of unresolved grievances, and their whispers carried the weight of unspoken tragedies. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I had misunderstood their presence. With newfound clarity, I addressed the spirits, acknowledging their pain and offering them the empathy they so desperately sought. The room trembled with an otherworldly energy as the atmosphere shifted. The whispers transformed from haunting moans to a chorus of sorrowful lamentations. Shadows danced with a spectral grace, no longer menacing but mournful. As I opened myself to their stories, the room became a conduit for the spirits to share their tales of woe. I heard of lost loves, betrayed confidences, and lives cut short by cruel twists of fate. The more I listened, the more the malevolent energy waned. It was as if the acknowledgement of their suffering had granted them a momentary release from the tormented cycle that bound them. In the days that followed, the oppressive atmosphere in the house lifted. The once hostile spirits now lingered as faint echoes, their presence reduced to a gentle murmur in the background. I no longer felt the weight of their malevolence, but rather a lingering sadness that clung to the house like a melancholy melody. The experts who had once scratched their heads in bewilderment returned, sensing the shift in the supernatural currents. With cautious optimism, they performed cleansing rituals once more, this time met with an eerie calmness from the spirits. The Victorian house, once a haven for malevolence, seemed to find a tenuous balance between the living and the dead. As time passed, I learned to coexist with the spirits that remained. I filled the once haunted rooms with flickering candles and offered my silent companions a place of solace. The echoes of their stories became a part of the house's history, a reminder that sometimes understanding and compassion could transform even the darkest of entities. The supernatural horror that had gripped my life had subsided, leaving behind a house marked by both tragedy and redemption. I became a keeper of stories, a guardian of the delicate equilibrium between the living and the dead. The experience had changed me, imparting a profound understanding of the thin veil that separated the realms, and the delicate threads that bound us all together, living and spectral alike. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more of our original stories, then please like and subscribe, and share and leave comments.